The problem that we're talking about tonight as a starting point is fixable. This is something that we can do something about. And I love talking about things that we can actually be proactive about. We think about the United States, we think about specific cities within the United States, and we think, not that long ago, we used to be the envy of the world. We were that country that other countries would look at and say, we want to be more like them because we were fit, we were healthy, we were that ideal. And we went from being that to one of the more overweight, obese nations anywhere in the world. The good news is that we can reverse that trend. The bad news is that it happened.
Before making this project, I knew there was an obesity problem, but what I didn't know was that it disproportionately affected low-income communities and the devastation that it's having in these communities, particularly healthcare costs, but what it means for our children, right? And the obesity rates are skyrocketing, the costs are skyrocketing.
USDA has a definition of food deserts, and it really means if you don't have access to fresh foods or a full-service grocery store within, I think it's about a mile and a half of your home in any particular direction. That doesn't sound like very far, mile and a half, but if you are living in a rural community or if you're living in an urban community and you don't have a vehicle to take you places, and if you have to switch buses 2 or 3 times and you're trying to bring home ice cream, that's going to melt along the way, so you're limited as to what your choices are by your access to even the transportation issues to get you there.
There's this really wonderful idea of taking some sort of mobile, it doesn't even have to be a vehicle, but it does have to become mobile so that it gets to the people on the very street and helps them get access to the very foods that they need most.
Mary spent, I think it was 3 days on the street with vendors. She went to Hunts Point. She went all over the city, all 5 boroughs, talking to the vendors and really talking to the city council and learning a tremendous amount about this. And she came back with several ideas about how to do it. And one of them was to tell the story of the green carts through the story of the vendors, the immigrant vendors.
To my surprise, I found that most of these street vendors were first-generation immigrants. And so there were some language issues. I knew that some would probably be fearful of a woman coming in and saying, so, blah, 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 blah. And I was so surprised at how their stories were just like those of my great-grandparents. My father-in-law came here from England. My grandparents came illegally from Ireland, and I thought, these are people that are in search of the American dream, and what's so unusual about this class of immigrants is that they are actually in service to our nation's poor. Once these carts came in, there were 2 things that happened. One was there was immediate access within 2 blocks or 3 blocks from their home of fresh fruits and vegetables. There was a person behind the cart that could explain what to do because, boy, he or she was going to sell you a vegetable. And you walk into the supermarket and they're dead and dried and, sad looking, and there's no store clerk around. So we found that these street vendors became embraced in many ways by their neighborhoods. It was like a classic little American business.
And when we brought them in, these 516 carts so far, we have seen that not only does access increase, not only does affordability become possible because price goes down, but consumption goes up and the disparity is reduced.
Policy is where we approach this issue, because we know if we can change a policy and we can get a grocery store in an area that doesn't have one, if we can support a corner store that's already established, if we can work with urban farmers as a way to help get their produce out into the communities, those policies that shape those environments will help make the changes for the community as a whole. So now the individual has some choices here.
As we said, it starts with access. We have to level the playing field. In order for people to be able to eat healthy foods, they have to have access to healthy foods, and this is definitely the beginning.